It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Our all-star panel in the house to talk about, well, all of the craziness going on around elections, the conspiracy theories, the fraud claims, well, the fantasy island world of the other guy and the Republican Party of today. Also, the big insurrection 2.0. Are we expecting 1 or 1 million crazy people to show up in Washington, D.C., and a little bit of talk about what grabs headlines in today's society. And here to share some thoughts on our topics, I've asked our good friend Rich Ojeda of No Dems Left Behind to come on the program. Rich, thanks for being here, man.
Airborne.
Sarah Burris, reporter over at RawStory. Sarah, thanks so much.
Happy birthday.
And, of course, the professor, our very own Brett Pransky. Brett, thanks for tuning in.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So let's start right from the beginning. It seems the Republicans didn't get their wet dream wish list answered this year. The California recall didn't go quite as they had imagined that it would. Let's start, Rich, with you. Thoughts on the outcome of the recall election?
Well, I think it was awesome that it was an absolute massacre. You know, the thing that bothers me is that, I guess now every time a Republican loses an election, it's time for a recall. It's cry foul. Tax-paying dollars are spent to do these garbage recalls. And at the end of the day, I think that the person who loses a recall should be made to pay for, the price of that. Tax-paying citizens should not be left with the bill of something like that. And it's absolute garbage. But I love the fact that, Larry the loser lost. And, yay, go Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, but, Brett, the thing that caught my attention is the election wasn't even over, and the Larry Elder world, the baby Trumps of the world were already crying foul, but they got whipped 2-1.
Yeah, that's right. And actually the website and the donation portal and all these different things to fight the fraud actually went up before the polls even opened. So I mean, this was they were always going to make that claim. It was always going to be ridiculous, and that's exactly what it's turned out to be. And I agree with Rich. The people who launched these campaigns and put all this money into it, they should have to pay the taxpayer cost of administering the entire thing, because it was never a serious effort. It was never real. It was never going to come through. But it was a way for Republicans to grab headlines and cause a bunch of trouble and so on. And so they did. And I think it's shameful, and I think they should have to pay the cost for it.
I'm right there with you. But Sarah, it's interesting. California has such a low bar to recall a governor. And it just seems like at some point they're going to have to change that, because a handful of rich people can go and fund, a signature drive to get, I think it's 1.5 million signatures to get a governor recalled and usurp an election. Isn't this what elections were supposed to be? You don't like the guy, you wait the next year and you throw him out?
That's what it should be. I think in California, you have to have a percentage of the last vote or something like that. And that's how they decide it. They actually couldn't get that to get the recall. They had to ask the judge for 2 more months and claimed, because of COVID, we need more time to get signatures. And so they couldn't even get the signatures in time, which should have been their greatest indication. Oh, gee, maybe this isn't going so well. It was an absolute bloodbath at 2-1. The sad thing is if you compare the map of who voted for to recall Newsom and the COVID map, there's some really sad overlap there. You got the highest COVID areas of the state are the ones that supported the recall, and they're the ones who are angry at all of these mask mandates and lockdowns and all of this stuff that Newsom basically ushered in. And that's why he got recalled in the first place. So now that everybody's, dying in California of COVID, folks are just like, gee, maybe that Gavin was right after all. Maybe that pretty boy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, and the reality is he got, I think, 2 percentage points higher in the recall than he did in the general election. And this was supposed to be the time where all the rabid haters were supposed to be going to the polls. This was supposed to be their moment.
Yeah, it was 2 points higher than he got in the first election, and the no on the recall was 5 points higher than he got. So what's funny is that to me means that people voted not to recall him, and then didn't. There was a pretty large percentage of people who didn't fill out the rest of the ballot, which is dangerous. You guys could have ended up with the freaky dude who doesn't like women.
I got to tell you, there was a dark side of me that goes, give the people what they want. Give them someone crazy like Death Santis, like a Greg Abbott. And then I said no, because innocent people are going to end up dead over it.
Yeah.
Well, I think here's the thing about California. They've done this once before, right? Like they had Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they do love their movie stars, but everybody was just like, oh, maybe this isn't such a good idea, because he kind of screwed some stuff up for the state, and it was important right now to have somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, elections, it is really kind of like a popularity contest, but it's got to be more than that. I mean, it's got to be people that are competent. You got to know that when you cast that vote for somebody, they're actually going to, put the interests of the people first. And that's why it drives me crazy when I see the Herschel Walkers of this world scream that they want to become senators. And to be honest with you, probably have no concept of what legislation even is.
That's what we ended up with Donald Trump.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the thing that Trump has done is everyone can be president now. I mean, as dumb as you possibly can be, that we want the worst guy. And look, the Republican Party understands that. They understand that they don't want everybody voting. They want to be able to put roadblocks in front of people to be able to vote, which is why you see places like Georgia doing what they're doing. But where I live in Pennsylvania, they're doing something even more fun. They're consolidating, or want to consolidate, every voter's personal information into one centralized database that they can do who knows what with. In fact, the head of the Senate here in Pennsylvania, Jake Corman, has come out and said that this attempt to grab all of the voter information is their number one issue. Not homelessness, not hungry children, not homeless veterans, not infrastructure, not evictions, none of that. Grabbing a hold of all of the demographic information and personal information of every voter, that's what's important. Rich, when you look at something like this, as someone who was a former state senator, what possible information, how could they use it? What good is this to them?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, what are you trying to do? What is your final, deal? What do you, it's kind of hard here because, I don't trust. I hate to say it, but there's a lot of mistrust in our government, and to sit and have them trying to get all the information that they can about everybody, you can't trust what they're going to do with it. At the minimum, they've got to come out and let people know, why do you want all that? What are you going to use all that information for? And once again, you've got real problems going on all across this country, especially across the state of Philadelphia, or not Philadelphia, but Pennsylvania. And yet, this is their number one priority. And to me, I have fears about why. There's a lot of things you need to be focused on, and you're not. You're focused on this. And it wouldn't surprise me if it's being, gathered for the wrong reasons.
No, absolutely. And my first thought was maybe they'll sell it to the MyPillow guy, and now I'm going to get tons of MyPillow ads. But Brett, I wanted to get your thoughts.
Well, in terms of the way I think this information is most likely to be used is kind of a, Cambridge Analytica 2.0. I don't know exactly what they're going to do with it themselves, but I think we can be fairly certain it's going to end up in the wrong hands. And I'm not sure if that's going to be some domestic group for use in GOP politics, or if it's going to end up outside the United States in some way. The simple fact is these days, you have to question everything, including whether or not these guys are just going to box it up, and ship it to Moscow. We really don't know what they're going to do with this information. There's a reason we don't typically give it to them. We don't centralize it in a way that gives them access to it. And now they're going through legal channels to essentially steal all this information. And there just can't be any good cause for it. So I don't know how it's going to end up in the wrong hands, but I do know that it will.
Yeah. All I want to know is if it does end up in Moscow, do I have to pay the shipping costs?
But where's the Republicans? Where's all these people out there that are the ones that, fear the government? I mean, this is the perfect reason why you should be screaming foul. And yet, where?
And again, to that point, here in Pennsylvania, we have 67 different counties, 67 different election officials. I was told by my Republican friends that the reason we have it set up in that way is diversity is our strength. You can't hack into one system. We got 67 different ones and 67 different people keeping an eye on things, so we have better security. And now you've got the Pennsylvania Senate, the Republicans in the Senate, wanting to subpoena all of those records so that they can control it. In what kind of cyber ninja future, I don't know. But Sarah, nothing good can come of it.
This is actually a dangerous thing for the Republicans to dip their toes in, because while it may have worked in Arizona, the latest poll that came out yesterday showed that that the number of Americans who believe the big lie is now down to 29%. So that's really getting small. Like, that means that there are actually Trump supporters who maybe don't even believe the big lie anymore. Majority of them are, of course, Republicans, which is why you see Republicans pushing this stuff. It's because their base is the one that's demanding it of them. But independents, obviously Democrats don't believe this, but now independents don't either. And I think people are starting to see the absurdity of it. And the more stories that get out there of, we've got to zoom in and look, see if there's bamboo in this because it might be from China. Like, the more stories that get out there, the more humiliating it's going to be for the Republicans.
Yeah, no, I'm hoping for real humiliation. But the sad thing is they're attacking on all fronts. And I look at, Brett, your state of Ohio, where the gerrymandered maps are now public, and, well, even worse than I think we probably could have imagined before.
Yeah, the maps here, and again, they're now they've now been voted in, so they are the maps now. Now, there are going to be legal challenges. It'll go to the Ohio Supreme Court for sure, but the maps are flat out ridiculous. I mean, just give you an idea, the state here is about 54-46 Republican. It's about an R+8 state, and in the past congressional elections for the last 10 years, we've had 16 congressional seats, 12 of which were Republican, 4 of which were Democrats. So in a 54-46 state, we've got a 3-to-1 split in congressional seats and a supermajority of Republicans in both the House and Senate. Complete domination and control. And it's been like that for over 10 years in a state that is just a few points from being right down the middle. This is how these things work, and this is how they take power and control that going forward. Keep in mind, in Ohio, we passed 2 ballot measures in the past 10 years to make it harder to gerrymander. And what we've ended up with is a gerrymander that's even worse than the one from the previous 10 years. That's how far they're willing to subvert the will of the people. And those ballot measures passed by 70% of the vote. And I think we're kind of seeing a little bit of the pushback on this. We take it back to the California recall. What we saw there was kind of a repudiation of the big lie, because the Republicans didn't run kind of a mainstream Republican semi-centrist kind of person who could have won, like somebody like an Arnold Schwarzenegger or something like that. They ran the most vile, right-wing nut job they could find. And the people were like, no, we're not following you. We're not taking it this far. We cannot support this. And which is why it ended up in a blowout. And I think that kind of result could be what you see here in a place like Ohio, where the gap is not nearly as big as people tend to think it is.
Yeah, and what I love about it is, we had talked about this earlier, is the sense of entitlement that Republicans believe that they have a right to all of those seats because past gerrymandering has given them a massive advantage. They believe that they're entitled to that. Voters be damned. And again, this is what when you give people absolute power, this is what we get, Sarah.
Yeah, and if you look at states like Texas, even Maryland, like the Democrats have done this in Maryland, which is sad because Maryland is pretty much all Democratic. So I don't understand what the point is of gerrymandering at that point. In Texas, it's just humiliating. I think it's Dan Crenshaw's district, which looks like a horseshoe, just like goes around, the large city, and it's so absurd. And Americans aren't stupid. They're really not. This is very, very easy to understand and to look at and go, oh, that's corruption. That's crap. And so these are not hard to win on. These are not hard issues to win on.
Dan Crenshaw and Jim Jordan have the two most gerrymandered districts in the country. And I live in, southern West Virginia, and I will tell you how bad it is in West Virginia. I can drive up the holler where I was raised, and everybody that lives on the right side of the road, their delegate belongs in the county. Everybody who lives on the other side of the road, their delegate belongs 40 miles down the road in the next county. It's blatantly obvious that you see people trying to play games with this to keep their people in power, and it's absolutely sickening.
But it comes back to, do voters get to pick their representatives, or in this case, representatives getting to pick their voters?
They set it up for themselves. That's a fact.
It is how they stay in power. And this is why I think, this week the Democrats came out with I would argue, a little bit more watered down version of the For the People Act. They're calling this bill the Freedom to Vote Act. It was put forth by Senator Amy Klobuchar. You got Joe Manchin to sign onto it because there was a bunch of stuff in there that he had proposed along with John Tester and Tim Kaine. Let's start with you, Rich, because Manchin has signed on to getting some of this done. It's going nowhere with the filibuster in place. Is there a way to carve out that Manchin will allow?
I really don't understand what Manchin is doing. I've been disgusted with him. West Virginia is 50th in the nation in infrastructure, and he's going to stand here and be he's going to be the reason why we don't get anything. I don't understand what is his issue. He will literally, to me, he's a male prostitute, and he sells himself to anybody who writes a check. And I hate to say it, but that's exactly the way I feel.
Sarah, your thoughts?
He's right. You can look at Joe Manchin's cash that he's raised and see exactly who's given him money, and that's basically matching his vote. What is interesting, though, is if you look at all the money that Manchin has got in, I think it's like the last 10 years, the West Virginia Democratic Party has given him over $100,000. They're his highest donor. So then my question is, okay, you're getting a whole lot of money from the Democratic Party. That's coming from really big Democratic donors and not just like, halfway Democrats. If you're giving money to the party, that's a hardcore Democrat, especially that kind of money.
But you have to understand that in West Virginia, the Democratic Party has one mission, and that's to keep Joe Manchin in power. I mean, literally, the rumor is that the chairman of the Democratic Party in West Virginia is Joe Manchin's cousin.
But the question that I have is, why then can't the Democrats buy Joe Manchin if they're giving him that much money? Where is he? Is there just that much that he's getting from Wall Street that he's like, oh no, we can't be taxing those rich people, we can't be collecting money from those corporations. It's this level of corruption that, just keeps moving its way through our government. And it sucks because we need Joe Manchin, and it sucks because I don't want Joe Manchin. So I really wish we could win another Senate seat so we could just be like, see ya.
Yeah.
Wouldn't want to be
not there. I don't believe in West Virginia. Brett, last thought?
Yeah, well, I actually think that, and again, I'm gonna try to be as optimistic about it as I can. I honestly think that, especially with all these different, kind of Republican fraud measures going on across the country, we are every day giving Joe Manchin all the cover he would ever need to change his mind. I mean, it is getting so incredibly bad out there that when Joe Manchin does finally change his mind, when he does finally, give in and allow these changes to take place, which I honestly believe is what he's going to end up doing, that he's going to have a really good argument for, hey, I tried my best to maintain, the way things were, and I just couldn't because things just got too out of control, and I had to. I think he's bargaining for a way that he can make a case to the people he needs to reelect, and most of which are Republicans. Now, will that be the way that it turns out? I don't know, but that's, when I have my optimistic hat on, that's kind of where I think this is going to end up. That this level of ridiculousness simply can't hold, and one guy is not going to be able to shoulder all that and be the one person responsible for maintaining.
Joe knows that the only way he stays in power is if he starts to reach out and relates to these Republicans in West Virginia. And that's exactly what he's doing. He wants to be able to go into 2024 and say, look, I'm the one that stood with Donald Trump. I'm the one that fought the Democrats, and these people are going to vote for him.
No, that's the sad
I think that's BS. I think if we send a whole bunch of transportation money to West Virginia, and all of a sudden all of these folks have jobs who didn't, I think Manchin gets to do a victory tour with Joe Biden and be like, I brought these jobs here.
Yeah, if that money goes there, we passed a bill for $1.6 billion to fix our roads, and we have the worst roads in the world, and that money's gone.
Yeah, no, it is what it is. I'm going to take a quick break here. Guys, stick around through the break. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. You got any questions, comments? We'd love to hear it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. You got suggestions on topics for our future panels? Let me know. We're going to take a quick break right here, right back with our all-star panel. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1947. That was the day workers at the International Harvester plant in Louisville, Kentucky had enough. They had just rejected a pay scale lower than that of harvester workers elsewhere. In her recent article for Leo Weekly, historian Tony Gilpin refers to the lower pay as the Southern differential. Harvester workers walked off the job in a 40-day strike. Black and white Louisville workers were united in a rare form of solidarity. International Harvester had a long labor-hating history. Its forerunner had been the McCormick Reaper Works, the site that sparked the 1886 Haymarket incident in Chicago. Harvester had been able to keep the unions out until the farm equipment workers of the CIO finally organized there in 1941. And the FE followed Harvester as they attempted to escape to the Union-free South. The FE successfully organized the new Louisville plant just 2 months before the strike. Workers learned quickly that they were paid much less making the same equipment as their brothers in Chicago, Indianapolis, and elsewhere. Gilpin adds that the FE literature forthrightly stated, quote, once the Negro and white workers were united, the low-wage system of the South would collapse. Workers pressed for their demands and appealed to area farmers for support. They stressed that farmers would not pay less for equipment, simply because local workers were paid less. Black and white workers picketed together, ate together, and planned their strike together at their new union hall. Harvester initially tried to red bait FE leaders. When that failed, the company was forced to grant steep wage increases. Gilpin cites FE News, which reported, quote, 2 smashing victories in hand. One over International Harvester, the other over the Mason-Dixon low wage line. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com. So on Saturday, September 18th, supposed to be Insurrection 2.0. Lots of I had a lot of people early on saying this was going to be like a million MAGA march again. All of the patriots were going to come out with their trifold hats and their cute military costumes, and they were going to converge on Washington, D.C. To show their power once again and their love of the former guy. But now I'm starting to hear some lowering of expectations because if you saw the rally last week with the My Pillow guy down in Kentucky, they were expecting 10,000, got about 250. So tapping down the expectations. And here to share some thoughts on, well, what we might see on September 18th, our all-star panel of Brett Pransky, our own Brett Pransky, Sir Burris of RawStory, and Rich Ojeda of No Dems Left Behind. Sarah, let's start with you. You live in D.C., preparing for a huge outcry of Trump supporters in your neighborhood, are you?
Not in my hood. I'm a little bit too far north in the city. People don't like to walk up the DuPont Circle Hill. It's really steep, and that just takes a lot of effort. So I was going to go downtown and find myself a nice rooftop bar and just overlook the crazy. But now they're saying that maybe it's not going to be that many people because the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and all the other militias are being like, oh, this is a honeypot. This is basically a trap, and the FBI is going to be there with handcuffs ready to arrest everybody. They are bringing out the National Guard. The fence is back up. Like, DC is taking it very, very seriously. I think I was concerned, but now that I'm starting to hear all of these folks talk about, the online chatter being, don't go, don't go. I don't know. I think it would be interesting if we end up with 6 National Guard troops to 1 MAGA dude. It could be a couple hundred people. I think if it is a couple hundred people and it looks pathetic and anemic, I think that's bad for Trump. It sort of makes him look like a loser, that they can't even get, the MAGA people together. Even though everybody was saying, don't go, don't go. I think it still looks sad for him.
Yeah. Brett, Roger Stone said, the same thing. Don't go. The FBI is gonna be there for you. And I look at someone like Stone as a master manipulator, someone who really understands, how to message and do this kind of stuff to keep the crazy all wadded up. This is a perfect conspiracy, a perfect thing for them to then pick up their failure and move it forward, I think.
Yeah, this is kind of expected. I mean, and when I saw Roger Stone say that this was all an FBI sting and not to go, what I read that as is Roger knows nobody's going to show. He knows nobody's going to show, and so we're gonna pre-spin this a little bit so that when nobody shows, it's going to be exactly what Roger Stone said it was going to be. See, I made these people not show up because I am that influential. I mean, Roger Stone knows the game. He knows how to play it. He knows how to spin. He knows how to get attention, and he knew this thing was going to flop because this. As a country collectively, we've been turning away from the big lie. We've been turning away from this kind of hyper militant, nonsensical right wing, just nuttery. Because it doesn't matter how often these people tell us that the COVID isn't real, the hospitals are still full. It doesn't matter how many times they tell us that Joe Biden was legitimately elected. It still doesn't make it true. You know what I mean? And so Roger comes along. He does the only thing he can do. He knows people aren't going to show up, so he's going to pretend it was what he always knew was going to happen.
Yeah, not surprising there. But here's the thing, Rich. The National Guard is going to be out in full force. As Sarah said, it'll probably be a 6-to-1 ratio. They are prepared like they probably should have been on January 6th.
Absolutely. They will be ready this time. The police will be ready this time. And I will tell you, I think that they need to make sure that they don't play no games with these people. I would literally draw a line. And if you cross that line, you will be dealt with severely, because we can never allow what happened on January the 6th to ever take place again in this country. And, like Brett was talking about, Roger Stone and them know, we just watched, literally, like you said, 250 people showed up to Mike Lindell. There's a lot of people that are waking up in this country and are realizing that this is absolute garbage. And a lot of them are starting to realize that I'm not going to be a part of that anymore. So, I think right now Roger Stone is trying to do some damage control because they know this is going to be a severe flop. But no matter what, no matter how many people shows, I don't care if only 200 people show. If they think for 1 second that they're going to storm our Capitol, they're going to get dealt with accordingly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But here's the thing: I'm glad that they're tapping down, telling people to stay home, because they're going to come from areas that are really struggling with COVID right now. The last thing we need is a super spreader event in the nation's capital. Keep those people in the states where all the craziness is going on. But here again, we're in this moment where, okay, the big lie over here isn't working, but they're still pushing all of the misinformation and all of the COVID denial nonsense and all the just craziness around the vaccine. So I got to tell you guys, I'm happy that this is tanking.
I think it's really important to understand, though, that even though we're very likely going to get a small turnout for this event, the people who are most likely to show up, even in smaller numbers, are very likely your most hardcore, potentially most dangerous folks. So Rich is right. There should be a line drawn, and they should be dealt with severely, because chances are the people who you're dealing with have already pushed through their own side telling them not to show up. So it's, we need to really be on the lookout for these folks, because chances are the people we're getting are going to be the worst of the worst.
That's an excellent point. You were going to jump in, Rich?
Well, I mean, my thoughts, with these people here, I mean, some of them are just not that smart. and some of these people are being manipulated to think that they're going there for the right reasons. So, I look at this and I just say that as long as we are ready to deal with these people, whether it's a big crowd or a large crowd, obviously the Capitol Police, the National Guard need to be prepared for thousands upon thousands to show up. And, if they don't, well, then that's the way it should be. But from here on out, I mean, we need to make sure that we always protect our Capitol so that we never see what took place on January the 6th ever again.
Yeah, right there with you. Sarah?
One of the things you were talking about, the COVID thing, we had an increase in COVID cases whenever they came, because they were eating in our restaurants, they were staying in our hotels, and the people who clean the hotel rooms and who work as servers, they were getting COVID because of these idiots, and so it spread throughout the city. My neighborhood is one of the highest vaccinated neighborhoods in DC, and I think we're at like 11 billion% of vaccinated people in the city. It's really high. So it's really frustrating because I don't want these people to, trash my Capitol, trash my city, but I really don't want them to bring COVID to our people.
Yeah, you definitely don't want them to infect everyone. And this is where, you go. At this point, we've had so much research done, so much information on the vaccine. These are the ones who are vaccine hesitant. And one of my favorite new bits is over the claim that the vaccine will make men's testicles get larger. In fact, Nicki Minaj somehow got into all of this about large testicles or some nonsense. Sarah, can you walk us through what that is?
So apparently it was her cousin's friend. I've been saying that it was her cousin's best friend's uncle's sister's psychic, just because it's that level of absurdity. And basically what happened is this dude, got the vaccine, and then, a week later or something, his testicles got really big. Well, it turns out when you get chlamydia, your testicles swell. So that explains why all of a sudden his fiance that he was supposed to get married to put the wedding on hold. It's not because of the vaccine. It's because she's like, I think you're screwing around on us. So it's the weirdest story now. And I guess the White House reached out to her because they wanted to have her talk to some doctors, and then she tweeted out something about how, the White House wants to bring me over. And then it's just like, oh my God, can you just imagine Nicki Minaj and Joe Biden in the Oval Office talking about balls? It's just it's the weirdest world we are living in right now. And, this is where we are.
Let me say this is one of the reasons why it just absolutely sickens me that we give certain people a microphone. There's, Nicki Minaj, you got it. You're a singer, you're a dancer. I got it. But, just keep to yourself and don't give her a microphone to be able to spew this garbage, because this is embarrassing. How about tell your cousin, if it's not chlamydia, he may get checked for, I don't know, testicular cancer. I don't know, something.
Anything else. And you're right. I mean, Sarah and I were talking earlier about a story that, I guess, was it a Marine oncologist, Sarah?
Yeah, urologist. It was a Marine urologist that tweeted out and said, just so you know, like, I've seen so many soldiers come through who got the vaccine, and if there was a problem with their testicles, I would know about it, because if one group of people cares the most about their testicles, it's the Marines, which made me think of Rich.
So I guess, Rich, are people in the military more concerned about their testicles than the rest of the male population? Because I think I'm going to push back on that.
Yeah, I mean, we like to think that, those of us that jump out of airplanes and stuff like that have bigger, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's not really the topic of conversation that you hear when you're hanging around with all the troops.
So if they were bigger, maybe the shot, if it were possible and make them bigger, it would be a good thing, no?
Well, I don't think so, because I jumped out of planes for 20 years and sometimes landings can hurt.
No,
I've
heard that.
Like, if they're a big cushion, then landing on it might be fine, but Man, they're not that
No,
big.
you don't know, Sarah. Stay out of this one. It would be painful.
Yeah. So, Brett, you want to get into this jackpot, or are we moving on?
I would just like to say that the show has entirely gone off the rails. But I will say this. These stories are are important in terms of the fact that they take up the bandwidth, in our media, in our attention span, that they're, that these things, they take up space, and they get tweeted and retweeted and talked about on the news and so on. Meanwhile, there are really important things going on in the world that get almost no coverage. There's all kinds of stuff that we really should be talking about. So this story is kind of unimportant, but also important. It's unimportant in the subject matter itself, which probably couldn't be less important. But it's really important in terms of the fact that look what we can put out there. Look what can happen. Look how easily distracted we can be from things of real importance. And so there's all kinds of really important stories going on, especially when it comes to the lives of working people. And there's a number of strikes in the country right now that are in various stages of progress that are getting absolutely no time in any media outlets whatsoever. Yet this story will become a part of the news loop that will be repeated every hour on the hour for 24 hours a day. Yeah. And it's kind of sad that we've come to this, but so like I said, it's important that we talk about it, and also important that we call it out for what it is, and that is a big distraction.
Yeah, I mean, the weird thing is I couldn't name a song that Nicki Minaj has sung, but I now know about her brothers, cousins, sisters, uncles, gardeners' testicles, and I don't want to know that. And the problem I have is by spreading this, someone's going to hear that initial thing and go, a COVID shot, giant balls, no thanks. And they're not going to get the vaccine, and they're not going to protect themselves. And we're going to be further down the road, and this mutating and things just getting worse. So all of this disinformation, all of this misinformation, all of this BS is going to make it worse for all of us down the road.
Yep.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah. It's sad, but I would say too, it does give us an opportunity to kind of talk about the absurdity of all of these conspiracy theories. I wrote this week about, there was a young woman who was about to get married. She was supposed to get married on the 21st of August, and went to her bachelorette party in Nashville and got COVID and died on September 10th. And now, instead of, having her wedding, her parents are holding her funeral. And her parents, said in their obituary and said to the media, she was scared because she read information that told her that that it caused infertility. And the one thing she wanted is, like, the second that she and her fiance got married, is they wanted to start trying to have kids. And so she was terrified. And then finally she got to a point where she read enough stuff and was like, oh, okay. And so they signed up to get the vaccine. She just got the virus before she could get the vaccine.
It's terrible.
I mean, these are important things to talk about. These myths and these lies, we have to, it's important to mock them, but it's important to also use them as a teaching experience to be like, no, not only is this a lie, but so is all of this other crazy sounding stuff.
No, you're right. And in the mocking frame, I look at this South Carolina GOP operative who, for the last several months, has been, mocking the virus, saying it's a hoax, it's non-existent, nothing to worry about. He's now dead. Got the COVID.
Yeah, there are these people that are, saying with their last dying breath, I still don't believe, and
I respect them. Those people I respect. It's the person who goes, oh my gosh, I got to the end and I should have gotten I should have got the vaccine. Yeah, you should have.
Well, I mean, look at the far right radio media folks. I mean, they're dropping like flies. I mean, Truffles, the Trumpian clown from Florida, guess what? Just died. All of these people that are, have a microphone, and instead of using that microphone to try to convince people to do what's right, that could potentially or will save their lives, they're the complete opposite, and they're dropping like flies.
Yep.
And part of me is I guess kind of cruel when I say, yeah, good, that's just another one gone.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they got family members that rely on them and need them, and now are going to mourn them.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and I because you had the one in Arizona, you got the one in Nashville. There's been a bunch of radio hosts, as you pointed out, who were the anti-vaxxers. Oh, it's all a hoax crowd. While I don't care that they've died off, my problem is how many people did they convince through their platform to not protect themselves, and how many people did they end up killing as a part of their rhetoric that we're never going to hold them accountable for.
That Christian broadcasting guy in Colorado, like he's been talking against the vaccine and against calling COVID a hoax for the last year, and that dude just died.
Look, I live in southern West Virginia, and I go to Walmart, and I'm the only person that wears a mask half the time. And it's because these people absolutely do not believe that COVID is what it is. And our local hospital is filled. Every ventilator is taken. The nurses, I spoke to a nurse the other day, and I asked her, I said, are people getting off of these ventilators? And she looked at me and she said, no, they're not. You've got people that were vaccinated. You got, and even them getting off the ventilator they've taken 15 years off of their lives, and they were vaccinated. But these people that are going on these ventilators, for the most part, they're done. It's over.
Yeah. I mean, we see these stories all across the country. Mississippi setting up a field hospital in a parking garage, northern Idaho giving the okay to ration. I mean, in your state, Brett, I mean, they're the diminishing number of beds as well.
Yeah, I saw a report today. Again, I live in Columbus, Ohio, which, for listeners who aren't familiar with the state, is right in the middle of the state, which is pretty much, the central location and closest to everywhere. So all the rural areas in the state probably go to Columbus first. And I saw a report today that said there are 21 ICU beds left in Columbus, Ohio, just 21. They're absolutely, filled up to capacity. And I think, one of the things that we're seeing is that, we're talking about vaccine mandates and all these different things that we would like to do. We're noticing that corporate America is beginning to actually lead the charge. You'll rarely see me say anything good about corporate America, but they do know how to manage risk. And they do know that when all of this is over, there's going to be accountability. And the corporations know this, and they know that people are going to have actionable claims when all of this is over. And if they didn't do the right things, that they're going to, they're going to be on the hook for a lot of injury and a lot of potential issues, which is why corporations are not, they got to it first.
Yep.
And when Biden came along and started, telling us to wear masks and, talking about mandates and things, this was cover for what the corporate world already wanted to do, because they understand risk. The American people may not understand risk, at least not a large portion on the right may not understand risk. But corporations do, and they know real from what's not real, and they're responding accordingly.
No, that's why I've said capitalism will figure it out. We always do, and I said from the beginning we should be filing workers' comp claims on every worker who gets it, and we should be filing lawsuits against school districts when kids come home with it. This way, we force them into doing what they have to do. I got to take a quick break right here, guys. Stick around through the break. On the other side, I want to talk a little bit about. Tax the rich. Joe Biden gave a speech here recently. We're going to maybe start thinking about possibly, taxing people who we haven't quite done so much over the last couple of decades. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the big Met Gala in New York City saw all of the elites come out for their little dinner and to show off all of their new clothes. My favorite of them, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, got the white dress with the "Tax the Rich" in bright red letters. Now, the Washington Post sought to beat her up. A lot of articles on how unusual it is for someone like her to be showing up at an enormously costly event. And there's some question about that. But the fact, anything to divert the fact of, we got to start taxing rich people. In fact, Joe Biden came out and had a speech saying, hey, we're going to start taxing rich people. And here to share some thoughts on, should we do that? Should we have the audacity to tax those who have done so much for us? I've got our all-star panel of Brett Pransky, Sarah Burris, and Rich Ojeda. Guys, thanks for sticking around.
Hey, bon.
Hey.
So the dress. Anybody got a problem with the dress?
Oh my God, it was so cute. It was really cute. And it was up the shoulder. And it totally hugged her curves. It was really cute. Other than that. My favorite outfit was the woman who had to peg the patriarchy on the front of her. I thought that was pretty funny. But, that's a little scene.
I think from what I heard, though, because Alexandria Ocasio was actually invited, she didn't have to pay the $35,000 a plate. So
right.
So, yeah, she was comped. There's no way that she could or would pay that much. I mean, she has bills too.
But I think it's a great message. I think that it's time. I mean, we've got people, they always said, trickle down economics. And, when the filthy rich's plate runneth over, what they didn't realize is that they keep a plate underneath their bowl, and it catches that money. And instead of letting it go down to the people, they just use it to buy bigger yachts and bigger houses and go to space. So
false buyback.
Yeah. So I'm completely for taxing the rich. I think that, Elizabeth Warren said that if we charged or taxed everybody after they make the first 50 million, 2 cents on the dollar after that, that would raise $3 trillion a year. I say let's go that route.
Yeah, I'm not sure the math on that, but we do need to start taxing them. But I'll be honest with you, I got to give AOC credit. It took some swollen testicles to walk in there with that dress, considering those are the elite of New York. Those are the wealthy elite that we're saying, I'm coming for you.
But if there's one thing about all of those people there, they probably all agree that we should tax the rich. That's the thing about a whole bunch of people like Warren Buffett who are saying, yes, please, for the love of God, tax me more. I would love to pay more. The problem is that, the government Republicans just keep cutting and keep cutting and keep cutting. And then there are the people like the Mercers whose company didn't pay taxes forever. And so finally after 10 years, they're being told they have to pay $7 billion of back taxes that they owe. And that's just the Mercers. We've got, I think Biden said it was $600 billion a year in uncollected taxes that we could be collecting. I mean, this isn't people who the fair share people, right? These are people who just don't pay their stupid bills.
No, and in fact, the Treasury Department came out with a report this week that said just that. In excess of $600 billion a year isn't being paid, and that could equate to about $7 trillion over the next decade. So when I hear people like Joe Manchin say we can't possibly afford $3.5 trillion to fund all of our human infrastructure needs, I'm going, yeah, we can. In fact, we can afford to do double what's being proposed.
Yeah, that's absolutely spot on right there. My thoughts is that when you have these people that make the money that they make and they get away with not having to pay taxes, the average person in this country doesn't get that capability. We have to pay our taxes, and it's absolutely sickening to think that these people are getting away with it. Congressman Ro Khanna said, he wants to make sure that we fund the IRS with the capability and to hire more people to specifically go after these people who've been beating, the taxes, because that right there alone would create $600 billion a year. When all that stuff adds up, that's money that we could do some real good for this country with. And it's time for us to do that.
Yep.
If we could spend 20 years and $2 trillion at war, let's spend the next 20 years, let's spend $2 trillion on our country.
Yeah, no, $600 billion here, $600 billion there. It eventually adds up to real money, Brett.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I've always been a strong believer in what I like to call Spider-Man ethics. This is the idea that with great power comes great responsibility. You know what I mean? Now, nobody in the real world has actual superpowers. In the real world, power is money. And so when you have people who have this ridiculous sum of money, their responsibility should match their wealth. Now, how we get to that kind of balance, we can debate that all the live long day. But one thing we can't debate is that any of our wealthy people are doing that currently. None of our country's wealthiest are living up to that simple statement, that with great power comes great responsibility. We have massive amounts of power out there. And what do we have? We have a space race between billionaires. And we have billionaires racing each other into space over vanity, purely over vanity. Meanwhile, we have conditions in America, the richest country in the history of ever. And we have people going to sleep at night without a roof over their heads, without a meal. It's criminal.
Yep.
And it's something that we should, and what we need to do, and this is kind of a collective thing, I don't know how exactly to get there, is to shift our understanding of what the balance between wealth and responsibility is. If we get there, then it'll be easy to make arguments about where we should tax people and, what's the right amount to pay and so on. Because these, where they're at now, it's so shamefully irresponsible that they should be embarrassed. Instead, they're openly buying politicians in order to keep things as slanted as they have always been.
No, you're right. And, I had a friend years ago who came from a very wealthy family. And the story that he told is like his grandfather during the World War II era was actually proud of the fact that he was able to pay the top marginal tax rate, which at the time was 92%. He said it was part of his patriotic duty to make sure that he paid his taxes so that money could be used to defend the country, to feed people, to do all the things that we needed to get done. That ideal of the past, that it's your civic duty, it's your responsibility to humanity, that is gone. We went through the 80s of greed is good, the one who dies with the most toys wins, and now we've internalized all that stuff, Rich.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, and I know this might be a crazy hoop dream, but my thought is $20 billion could end homelessness in America. I kind of wish we would say, okay, Bezos, you're going to get the homeless problem. That's yours. And let's start assigning the issues that we have in this country to these filthy rich people. And let's mirror them up with a filthy rich evangelical as well. So Jim Baker and Jeff Bezos are going to solve the homeless problem in this country and work that route. It is absolutely sickening that we have this level of wealth. And Brett said it absolutely perfectly. These people they're not even ashamed of it. And they should be. They should be ashamed of the fact that you have more money than you could spend in 1,000 lifetimes, and you still just want more. It could be your legacy. You could have the legacy that you ended world hunger, that you made sure that everybody had adequate, clean drinking water. That could be your legacy. And yet these people, they've got the money to follow through and accomplish that, and they won't. And it's so sad. Yeah.
Because the reality is enough is never enough. And I often think of the former CEO of Caterpillar, who was asked, how much profit is enough? And he said that it's never enough. We're always going to squeeze efficiencies. We're always going to squeeze wages down. We're always going to squeeze the quarter till the eagle screams, so to speak, because it's never enough. And that's the mindset. It's never enough with these people, Sarah.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the thing with the pandemic is we're starting to see now that folks kind of have choices whenever they want to go back to work and who they want to work for. And so a lot of people who aren't getting paid enough, that's not enough anymore, right? Like there are other options out there. And so you've got, I read the other day that we're about to have a nursing shortage because there are these like traveling nurses now for a massive company, and they can make 90 to 150 grand a year. Whereas at the local community hospital, they're probably going to get 60 if they're lucky.
Yeah.
And so it's, that is sort of, in some ways, that is resetting a little bit. And every time I read one of those stories, like I get a little shoot of excitement where it's just like, oh, somebody's winning. But we know it's short lived. And I like the idea that Rich came up with. We could just tell Jeff Bezos that, we're going to rename water and we'll just start drinking Bezos. And maybe that'll make him happy enough. Like we've changed the name of water to you, and henceforth we shall call it after you because you're going to make it clean for the whole world.
There you go. It's going to be interesting to see where this plays out. But here's the problem. We focus on all of the attention on that kind of stuff, while you've got, as Brett said earlier, you've got workers in 5 different states at Nabisco on strike today, fighting for better wages, hours, conditions, mostly hours. They'd like to spend some time with their family, please. But our mainstream corporate controlled media having none of it.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, though, what she also said about the nurses. You're going to sit here and you're going to bring people in and you're going to pay them $7,500, a salary. But yet the nurses that you have in the hospitals that have been working nonstop for the past 19 months, you're not going to pay them that salary. I mean, to me, we called these people heroes for an entire year. The people who stocked the shelves, the truck drivers, the nurses, and we didn't do nothing for them. I mean, This is absolute garbage.
No, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you guys. But we got a lot of work to do and a lot of craziness going on, and nothing of surprise. I appreciate you guys sticking around for us. I appreciate this week's panel, our panel of Sarah Burris of RawStory, Brett Pransky, the professor here with the program, and also Rich Ojeda of No Dem Left Behind. If you got any questions, comments, I'd love to hear it. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast there at the website. If you've got any thoughts, you want to follow us on social media, you can follow us at Rick Smith Show. On Facebook, give us a like. On YouTube, make sure you subscribe and give it a share. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.